behalf of the Director General of UNESCO, Ms. Irina Bukova, whom I represent at this Congress, I extend heartfelt good wishes to the Basque government, parliament, and to the Congress. All countries need strong education, training, and learning systems to address globalization, critical economic development, and societal challenges, including poverty and hunger, demographic shifts, unemployment, climate change, urbanization, migration, peace and security. Many governments have acknowledged that a significant change is needed in the way we offer and adapt education, training, and learning to suit needs that evolve from nature and society that keep changing over the course of human lives. Hence, that learning and education must be viewed as a lifelong learning process. Nonetheless, the crucial role of lifelong learning in economic growth, in building a sustainable and socially cohesive society, and in equipping individuals to learn how to know, how to do, how to be, and how to live together, is still not sufficiently recognized in public policy. Nor has due attention been accorded to developing integrated systems of lifelong learning. If some UNESCO member states have made substantial progress towards establishing lifelong learning systems, the discourse of lifelong learning is only partially and inconsistently evident in policy and practice in other member states. Since its foundation, UNESCO has promoted education as a universal human right that is a key for personal fulfillment and a driver of social and economic development. Equity in access to quality education throughout life and to decent work are necessary conditions for empowering individuals and building sustainable, just, and peaceful societies. This vision of education calls for social policy based on respect for human rights and dignity. It is a vision that promotes inclusion and opportunities for all to learn at all ages throughout life. Rooted in many cultures, societies, and religions, it could be claimed that lifelong learning has existed throughout recorded human history. Whereas there have been many definitions, perhaps the most widely known is one which considers it as a concept resting upon the integration of learning and living, horizontally in life-wide contexts across family, cultural and community settings, study, work, and leisure, and vertically over an individual's whole life from birth to old age. Lifelong learning is thus more than just a linear progression of learning from early childhood education to higher and adult education. It encompasses all learning activities undertaken in formal, non-formal, and informal settings with the effect of changing behavior, knowledge, understanding, attitudes, values, and competences for personal growth, social and economic well-being, democratic citizenship, cultural identity, and employability. The standpoint of UNESCO has always been that human development through education involves a process which is closely connected with humanistic values and human rights. Its vision is for every citizen to have access to good quality education and effective learning delivered through multiple pathways, formal and non-formal, to meet the learning needs throughout life, to facilitate the acquisition of knowledge, skills, and competences for individual development, for employability, and to enable them to participate actively in society. Whether we are talking about upgrading knowledge and skills, learning new ones, or simply being given a second chance, lifelong learning stands to become increasingly essential in our fast-changing societies and labor markets. As a comprehensive and integrated system providing competences that enable individuals to live and work in today's fast-changing world, it has become a vital guiding principle contributing to inclusive education and sustainable development, economic, social, cultural, and environmental. Taking responsibility for society and nature, mastering anticipatory learning in a rapidly changing world of increasing social, economic, and environmental crises are becoming part of essential core competencies. In addition, with increasingly rapid changes in the workplace, in part due to the changing technology and as a result of changing social needs in the context of globalization, there is a demand for more complex competences, such as the ability to think critically, to be creative, innovative, and entrepreneurial, to cope with rapid change, remain flexible, and to be oriented to problem solving. Individuals must learn how to learn in order that they maintain their full and continued participation in civil society and in employment, for democratic participation, and in order to live together and reduce the risk for economic and social exclusion. In this context, learning to learn is a quintessential prerequisite for lifelong learning, and thus education and training should provide the learning environment for the development of this competence for all citizens, including persons with fewer opportunities and through different learning environments, be they formal, non-formal, or informal. Moreover, the transformation in the world of work is such that future generations are expected to take up 3 to 4 different occupations during their working life. The acquisition of relevant abilities and the competence to anticipate new needs and demands is a lifelong process and can only be developed in a flexible curriculum which is geared towards different learners' needs and which includes the whole spectrum of learning opportunities, formal, non-formal, and informal. UNESCO's 2010 Education for All Global Monitoring Report indicates that in supporting economic growth, combating poverty, and overcoming social marginalization, it is clear that no government can afford to ignore the importance of competences and of learning. The way forward to achieve and sustain this is to build a comprehensive system of recognition and validation of all kinds of learning, as well as to create a flexible mechanism of bridges between different levels and sectors in education and with other sectors involved in learning. This is the sector-wide, sector cross-cutting approach. There is a growing demand by youth and adults for recognition of the knowledge, skills, and competences acquired in non-formal and informal learning settings in the course of their lifetime. Recognition of non-formal and informal learning has relevance not only with regard to education and training policies, but also to the related challenges of poverty reduction, job creation, employment, and social inclusion. validation of formal and non-formal learning can be instrumental in motivating adults to resume and continue learning, as it makes visible the competences which the adult may not have been aware of having, and places the individual at the appropriate level on a national qualification framework, the NQF, if such one is in place. It also reduces the costs by eliminating or reducing the need to spend time and money relearning what has already been learned. It may give an individual either access to a learning program, validation for a partial qualification, or validation for a full qualification. Recognition, validation, and accreditation has been a good example of certification and skills development, especially during economic recession. In difficult economic times, there's a great demand for new professional skills and knowledge through lifelong learning programs, which recognize the experience acquired during the company-based or firm-based training or other work-based training. Many adult education activities are also increasingly valued by private sector companies. The EU has developed a common reference framework, the European Qualification Framework for Lifelong Learning, helping educational institutions, employers, and individuals to compare qualifications across the EU's diverse education and training systems. This tool is essential for developing a European internal employment market, as it aims to facilitate application for working place or education in other European countries. 8 of the EU 27 countries have already reached an advanced level of implementation of recognition, validation, and accreditation. Another 8 countries are close to integrating the validation of non-formal and informal learning into their qualifications system. In Germany, a learning passport is used for recording and certifying skills, including those acquired informally. It is now being used across the country to provide evidence of acquired skills, promote personal educational prospects, and draw greater public attention to informal learning. A program which is worthwhile to be mentioned is the New Opportunities Initiative in Portugal. Launched in 2005 by the Ministries of Education and Employment, it aims at significantly enhancing the qualifications level of the Portuguese population. Thus, the guiding objective for New Opportunities was to bring the general schooling up to the upper secondary education level. The project has 2 main pillars: addressing the low levels of schooling and high dropout among young people, and raising the basic qualifications level of the adult population. It seeks to accelerate the raising of the educational level of the labor force and to qualify active workers through the national system for recognizing, validating, and certifying competences. In Australia, the recognition, validation, and accreditation takes a practical approach to develop a picture of learners' skills and knowledge to see if they can be compared with industry standards. Factories and companies in many countries are developing recognition, validation, and accreditation to recognize workers' skills, knowledge, and work experience. In Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, with qualifications so obtained, the employees may pursue further studies at different levels to obtain higher and wider qualifications. However, recognition, validation, and accreditation is not always easy. In Slovenia, for example, employers claim that they are not capable of carrying out validation processes. Slovenia notes that both the representatives of the formal education system and social partners are suspicious of the quality of qualifications achieved through validation of non-formal learning. Another concern, especially for non-formal learning itself, is the fear that the validation of non-formal and informal learning would deepen the disregard for non-award-bearing learning. Yet one thing is sure, even if problems arise, like in the case of Slovenia, the system of recognition and validation brings important benefits for society as a whole, not only in the area of economic productivity, but also in terms of equity and social empowerment. Among national approaches to lifelong learning, there are countries with a long-established tradition of lifelong learning like Japan, South Korea, the Nordic countries. In developed countries such as the United Kingdom and Australia, there have been recent national policy drives. And developing countries like China, Thailand, Namibia, as well as countries of the Latin America and the Caribbean region, have also recently introduced policies. Aside from the EU Lisbon strategy, in which member states agreed on the need for lifelong learning policies to support development in the European region, which has resulted in the formation and implementation of policies and program measures. To this end, there are still few countries with lifelong learning policies. The following will take stock of the state of policy in some countries worldwide. Japan has a strong law system and policies supporting the promotion of lifelong learning society and the provision of a wide variety of adult educational activities. The Japanese lifelong learning system has several notable strengths, such as specific institutes whose purpose is to provide people living in the municipal area with education, learning, and cultural opportunities, a wide variety of certification programs, and on-the-job training with local businesses. In 2006, the term lifelong learning was added to Japan's educational charter, the fundamental law of education. Following this amendment, discussions are now centered on defining the kind of lifelong learning policy that Japan should construct. In the Republic of Korea, lifelong education, already in 1980, was introduced into the Constitution, as it was amended to read, "The state is responsible for promoting lifelong education." In 1982, the Social Education Act was adopted as the legal and policy framework for non-formal and adult education. The Lifelong Learning Act of 2007 clarified the scope and field of lifelong education at the regional level. Metropolitan and provincial governments are now required to establish annual implementation plans within 5-year national lifelong education promotion strategies set out by the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology.